Shannaan Dawda is the founder and CEO of True Financial Coaches in Atlanta, Georgia, and author of From Paychecks to Power, 7 Power Moves to Unlock Wealth Building. Shannaan has personally led dozens of clients, including seminary students and pastors, to financial empowerment and freedom, collectively paying off a total of more than $750,000 in debt. He is the creator of a high school curriculum on personal finances and owner of the budgeting app, Soci Budget, which connects friends and family members as they get out of debt and build wealth. At Candler School of Theology, Shannaan leads the Financial Freedom Project, a mini-course that combines small group lessons with one-on-one coaching to help reduce students' debt and financial stress. He teaches and speaks to large and small groups in both secular and faith environments throughout the Southeast region. Please welcome to the stage, Shannaan Dawda.
Good morning. Come on, you guys. I need a little bit more energy. Good morning.
Good morning.
There it is. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I remember when I was in college, it was a bright fall day in Statesboro, Georgia. The sun was shining, and I could literally feel the rays of the sun beaming on my skin. There was a slight breeze. It was kind of cool. It kind of cooled me as I walked. And the birds were chirping as if they were greeting me personally. I looked down at that moment, and I saw that my phone was ringing, right? And it was my mom. And I do what I normally do. I answered the phone. I said, "Hey, Mom." She goes, "Hey, baby." And at that moment, I knew something was up. She paused. And at that moment, that's when I realized, and she told me that she and my father were filing for bankruptcy. Here I was, a student at Georgia Southern University, studying both accounting and finance, and both my parents were filing bankruptcy. That was a major wake-up call for me. I'll never forget that moment as a son, where she felt that she was less than because she couldn't keep true to her word, through her financial commitment. That was a major wake-up call for me. And otherwise, I knew that if I wanted to do better financially, if I wanted to be in a better place, I had to do better and be better. Otherwise, as we all know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So a few years later, I become a financial coach to help people become better and proactive with their finances and to take control of their financial narrative. I've worked with a single mom with 2 kids who runs a very successful company, but had employees stealing money from the company, so much so she had to turn to her parents for financial assistance. I knew another couple that I worked with making $140,000 a year, but they were on the verge of filing bankruptcy because they were living beyond their means. I worked with another woman. She made about $120,000 a year, but had to wait until payday to pay her accountant $200 just to file her taxes. And actually, in fact, just yesterday, I got a call from a couple who runs a restaurant making $700,000 a year, but they're living month to month, barely getting by. So it's clear that most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So paycheck to paycheck, in fact, that if most of us were to walk by a bank today, we're so broke that we would trigger the alarm. Our high levels of debt, our lack of patience, our microwave mentality has caused us to accumulate debt to get things right here, right now, even if we can't afford it. The definition of afford is to be able to pay for something outright. And in fact, a lot of us have been conditioned otherwise. Right? And 90% of Americans actually buy things that they can't afford as a result. And so, as a result, people are not fulfilling their spiritual potential because they're financially oppressed. And here's why. Debt is a form of modern-day slavery. Proverbs 22:7. I'm sure you've all heard it. The borrower is slave to the lender. See, when you borrow money and you pay someone else, your hard-earned work, the fruits of your labor, your sweat, your equity is going towards someone else. That, by definition, ladies and gentlemen, is slavery. See, slavery, financial slavery, hinders the human from having the ability to grow. Because you can't help someone grow as a pastor. I can't help myself grow as an individual if my spirit feels enslaved. It's hard to be more generous when you feel like you have nothing to give. It's hard to smile a little bit more when you feel like there's nothing worth smiling about. It's hard to think about your future when you're simply trying to make it to tomorrow. Debt also leads to spiritual corruption. One of the teachings of my friend, Imam Abdullah, he says, debt is a vehicle for spiritual disease. We all know that a vehicle is supposed to take you to where you're trying to go faster than on your own 2 feet. We just have to make sure that this vehicle is taking us where we want to go. A person who's in debt tells lies and breaks promises, according to the Prophet Muhammad. See, what this indicates is that when a person is in debt, you can become corrupted by the pressure of that debt. And in fact, a recent study indicated that when unemployment goes up 1%, 10,000 more women and children are beaten and battered. So what this shows us is that when money is restricted from people, or when people are in tight financial situations, they tend to take it out on their family, their loved ones, and sometimes even commit crimes against their very own community. Debt is destructive as well. Debt limits your ability to take chances. Debt limits your ability to bet on yourself. You tend to find yourself, quote unquote, being realistic. This I know personally, right? Because debt also limits your creativity. And this I know personally because when I was in debt, I never ever thought about becoming an author. Plus, shoot, I almost failed 12th grade English. Me, be an author? But the truth is, breaking free from the chains of debt opened up my mind and my heart to achieve and believe in myself. Lack of self-confidence is also a product of being in debt. You feel hopeless and you tend to feel stuck. Hence why we have this concept and popular phrase, the rat in the wheel. Not living your best life, not living to your full potential is all a result of this. In a recent study by John Hancock, revealed that financial stress is triggering physical and psychological symptoms like anxiety and sleeplessness in roughly 60% of Americans. Money is the number one cause of stress in America today. In fact, 69% of workers who are stressed out about their finances, of which 72% of that 69 is worried about their finances while they're at work actually making money. Which shows you that when you're concerned about your money, it can hijack your thoughts, and most importantly, it can hijack your spirit. You guys, I ain't a preacher, but can I preach to y'all for a second? Thank you. A broke congregation is not a happy one. I'll say that again. A broke congregation is not a happy one. It's important for pastors to speak about financial freedom. You're trusted individuals. You've been entrusted by your community as spiritual guides. In fact, 3 of the 5 key traits when it comes to a church leader, according to Outreach magazine, connect to financial freedom. Authentic faith. It is authentic faith that you love and follow the teachings of Jesus. Authentic faith reveals that you trust God in the good times and the bad times. It's authentic faith that you encourage your community to pursue a state of financial freedom and good stewardship. Because if you do this and you firmly practice it yourself, you can lead by a great example. Genuine love. Jesus excellently modeled love. People want to know that their pastor genuinely cares about them. They can feel it, but most importantly, your actions will reveal it. It's genuine love to want to see your congregation free from the oppression of debt. It's genuine love to want to see your congregation free from financial hardship, whether it be due to lack of education or whether it be due to poor financial management. Hope-filled leadership. A hope-filled pastor has hope for a better future. A pastor who is financially free or on the path to financial freedom can be a beacon of light. The best leader, we all know this, that the best leader is the one who is in the trenches with the soldiers. So as a church leader, you can change your entire mindset of your congregation by simply starting your personal journey to financial freedom. A hope-filled leader with a clear vision and direction can lead to a healthy and highly productive results for your community. Your role as a pastor, as a church leader, is to help people live their best life. In finances, getting that in control is a big part of that. See, finance is a major part to spiritual development. Matthew 6:21, for where your treasure is, your heart will also be. I.e., your treasure is where your heart is. I.e., where you spend your money is where your heart lies. See, Jesus wasn't for or against money. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil, not the money itself. His focus was on our hearts, not our money. He was more interested in our motives than our money. See, money takes on the traits of those whose possession it is in, not the other way around. As a financial coach, I can personally tell you that I can take one look at your bank statement and see what's important to you. Or I can simply look at your spending for the last 30 days and figure out the same thing. I can see what your treasure is. I can see where your heart lies. Just be sure that what you claim to be important to you and how you spend your money, that the two align. Because it's hard to reach your spiritual potential if you're not financially free. So much so, we know that if your congregation is worried about their money while they're at work, you better believe they're worried about their money while they're sitting in the pews when they should be working on themselves. So how do we do it? The first thing foremost, we have got to teach our people that their income is a trust from the Most High. There is a big responsibility when it comes to earning an income. God is entrusting you with resources and income to provide for you, your family, and to do good works in your community. Don't be surprised if you have poor financial management skills. Do not be surprised if you don't get promoted to manage more. Don't be surprised if you actually get demoted to manage less. Because to whom much is given, much is required. God is entrusting you with resources that could have been given to someone else. All of us know there are millions of people around the globe who are not generating an income today. So just think about how blessed you are and marinate that on that for a second. You have already been provided for, ladies and gentlemen. How much you're going to earn over your lifetime, that's already been decreed. How you manage that money, though, that's the vital part, because that is completely up to you. We've all heard of the parable of the talents, where a master was leaving his house to travel for a while, and before leaving, he entrusted to his servants property of 8 talents. According to the abilities of each man, one servant received 5 talents, the second servant received 2 talents, and the third servant received 1 talent. Back then, a talent was a significant amount of money. Well, upon returning home, after a long absence, the master asked his 3 servants for an account of the talents he had entrusted to them. The first and the second both explained that they put their talents to work and were able to double that of which they were given. And as rightfully so, they were both rewarded. The third servant, however, had merely buried the talent in the ground, and as a result, was punished by his master. That story shows us that God is entrusting us with money, with resources. What are you going to do with it? The money entrusted in our possession, in our hands, in your church, in your community, will either be a witness for you or a witness against you. Just make sure that money testifies as an ally. And just imagine if more of the world's wealth was in the hands of the believers of God. Just imagine what this planet would look like. Just imagine what the United States would look like. Just imagine what the world would look like. The first step to managing your money well is learning how to budget. Budgeting is the single most critical piece to gaining control of your income. It is also the single most critical piece to gaining control of your expenses. It empowers, it gives a sense of control, and it instantly gives you a sense of clarity and truth to your financial situation. In fact, those who budget tend to find up to 30% additional income. That doesn't mean that they made more money. It simply means that they're doing better with their income and therefore can do more with it. For example, I had a client that I worked with, wanted to get his finances in order. We sat down, we did a budget, coming to realize this individual was buying Starbucks coffee every day on their way to work. You know me, I'm a numbers guy. I did the math. That was roughly about $120 a month just for coffee 5 days a week. Simply, we did the budget, and we realized that if he would just make coffee at home save himself about $100 a month. And so he took that $100 and he used that $100 to help him pay off debt. And so it shows you, he didn't make more money. He just simply was accounting for his money better and was able to use it to help achieve his financial goals. So the type of budgeting that we recommend is called zero-based budgeting. Zero-based budgeting is unique in the sense that you start with your income. You start with your bring-home pay, how much you're bringing home from work, the check, not what's before taxes, not your estimated salary, or what's coming home after taxes, after insurance, everything is taken out. So what you do after that, you start with your income up top. You allocate your income to various categories, whether it be charity, you've got your tithes and your offerings, you've got food, groceries, and restaurants, you've got savings, we've got housing, utilities, we've got entertainment, travel, debt, we've got personal, right? And once you get through those expenses and those categories, you take the income minus the total of those expenses, and that gives you, should be a zero at the bottom. And that's why we call it zero-based budgeting. Now, it doesn't mean that we spent every dollar. It simply means that every dollar that came in was accounted for and went to a category, right? Because I mentioned that we had savings. We could have put money in savings, correct? So when you do a budget like this, every dollar gets assigned a name. That's taking responsibility of every dollar God has put in your possession. And so what you want to do is, now that you've done this budget, you want to, first step, let's set aside $1,000 to cover emergencies. Now, once you set that aside, you've achieved that goal, the next step, we've got to start eliminating debt. We've got to free ourselves from financial oppression. So the first thing that you want to do is, after doing that budget, seeing how much you can actually work towards paying off debt, you want to organize your debts from smallest to largest. Smallest balance to largest balance. Now, what happens when you do this budget? You want to make sure that the amount that we've budgeted, that we allocate towards paying off debt, we're paying the minimums on every single debt, except for the smallest one, which we listed up top. We take the extra that was in that budget that we could allocate towards debt, and we apply it towards the first debt. Now, what happens when you do this? It amplifies the effect of how much debt, how much money is going towards that debt. And when you do this, you speed up the process dramatically in how fast you would have paid off that debt. And so while you're paying the minimums on all the others, the first one is being annihilated. Now, once you pay off the first debt, that same amount of money that was going towards the first debt now rolls down into the second, right? And so you do the same thing. You aggressively attack. That debt gets destroyed. You move on to the third. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we call the debt snowball method. This is how you effectively pay off debt. This is how you use intention and purpose to become financially free. The debt snowball itself is a huge behavior modification, because once you start seeing progress, it's just like going to the gym and losing weight. You want to keep going. And so what happens is that when you use this method, the chances of success of eliminating debt are very, very high. And in fact, I personally use this method to where I ended up, it would have taken me 2 to 3 years to pay off about $26,000 worth of debt on a regular payment plan. It took me 11 months. So I stand here before you being debt-free. This summer will be 8 years. And in fact, I've used the same method with my clients, and now we're to the tune of helping people pay off about $1.3 million in the last 5 years worth of debt. So it's effective. It works. I can tell you that firsthand that being broke is a very common trend in society. But I can also tell you for sure that being broke is not cute. So what happens when you become financially free? The first and foremost thing that you recognize is that you have control over your time and your resources. This control gives you the control over how you spend your money, but also about how you spend your time. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the definition of self-empowerment. You also become more confident and less insecure. See, a lot of us think that confidence has to be a trait or skill that someone is born with, when in reality, confidence is a skill that's actually learned over time. Confidence is the ability to act. Someone's not born confident, they just have the ability to act on something, even if they lack the experience. Even if the idea is fresh in their mind, they act. And so when someone has more confidence, that means in your community, more ideas and more opportunities will be acted on. And that means in your church, more ideas and more opportunities will be presented. There are millions of ideas that have not come to the table because of people's lack of confidence. And improving their finances will help with that. More charity and more giving. When you don't have debt, ladies and gentlemen, you have more to give. The math is simple. Or you can at least donate without feeling that it's taking away from putting food on your table. This, ladies and gentlemen, will allow for your heart to be in a better place when giving, but then also for that deed or that act of good faith to be blessed even more. Transferable discipline. Once the discipline to master one's finances has been learned, you can easily transfer it to any area of your life, whether it be your health, whether it be your fitness, whether it be your marriages, your relationships, your spiritual work development, your career, your business, even investing. This also leads to financial freedom, also leads to happier marriages. The number one cause for arguments in a household today are financial related. And so if we can address these financial issues, if we can remove the pressures of debt, we create an environment for better marriages. Studies have shown that large amounts of debt have a severe effect on the psychological well-being of a household. And in fact, the resentment of a spouse is the number one way of coping with this high level of debt. In fact, I worked with a millennial couple. They had about $150,000 worth of debt. Student loans, credit cards, finance furniture, all the kind of debt you could think about, they had it. They were the prime example couple. They were broke. They were stressed out. Their marriage was on rocks. They weren't communicating clearly. But literally, after 3 months of just simply working with them, they started communicating about their finances, doing a budget together, laying out their financial goals. You just saw God in the middle of their relationship working. They started healing. They started communicating more effectively. They got on the same page financially. Surprisingly enough, a lot of good happens when two people's financial goals begin to align. And so 2.5 years later, they are completely debt-free, paid off the $150,000. They've both went back to school and cash flowed their own education to change their careers. They're now coders, and they code now for major companies. And as a result, their marriage has flipped over tenfold. They are living a very happy, successful, quote unquote, as the young people say, living their best life. And so when it comes to this resentment, it can also be applied to your employer. It can also be applied to extended family. It can also be applied to your alma mater. In fact, if your manager asks you to stay a little later at work, you might just feel some type of way. If your alma mater calls you and they would like for you to donate back to the school, but you feel like they're the reason why you have all this debt in the first place, you might feel some type of way. When that family member calls you and they were just in Cancun last week and they want to borrow some money, you might just feel some type of way. So when it comes to debt and when it comes to becoming financially free, another piece that's major is the less anxiety and depression that comes with it. As someone myself who was personally buried in debt, who had poor financial management skills, and I now stand before you debt-free, and as someone who has helped people clear $1.3 million worth of debt, I can tell you and I can testify that getting your finances in order lifts a huge burden off your shoulders. It is as if like you can feel the weight being transplanted onto the earth and off of you. You just live better and you sleep better. Now, as a pastor, it's important that you work towards helping your people get to this position. It's going to, number one, increase their trust in you. And it's also going to help them commit more to your congregation and your work and your mission, because you're adding value to their lives. It would also result in more charitable contributions, tithes, and offerings. The congregation will ultimately have a better attitude, because people in better places spiritually tend to want to do more good work. And most importantly, it'll result in better family life. Family life is the core of humanity. And so if we can remove the number one cause of issues in a family, you ultimately are going to have a better family and a better congregation. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my challenge to you is that you start today. Start having conversations. Start sharing your financial journeys and your financial inspirations for your community. Start creating spaces so people can discuss their finances. And lastly, start creating programming in your institutions where people can learn about financial management and improvement. Because if you start, ladies and gentlemen, your members will grow. Their families will grow. Your church will grow. And ultimately, the community around and the impact that you make will also grow. Thank you.
One of the things that happens in my church is people are reading books like Toxic Charity, Helping Hurts, and that kind of thing. So how does one address the fact that you do want to be generous and so forth, but they don't want to create dependency?
Gotcha. So one thing that when it comes to the giving piece, and I guess in regards to the toxic charity, is that ultimately one of the problems that I've noticed is that a lot of us try to put ourselves in the position as if we are the answer for that person. When in reality, God is using me to provide the sustenance and resources for this person. Now, I can help by providing additional classes and maybe helping them elevate themselves so they can earn their own income, but my test is if I'm going to give this money. My test is not what they're going to do with it. My test is not if they stay there and keep with their hand out. My test is the condition of my heart. What am I giving? What am I doing? Or do I feel like I'm doing this person a disservice by giving them some of the resources that God has blessed me with? So I try to keep that as the main focus of this is my test, this is my situation, how is my heart, versus if I keep giving this person the money, they're not learning how to fish. I'm just giving them the fish. When in reality, sometimes they still need to eat to get the nutrients so they can learn how to fish. Because if I'm hungry and I'm starving, I'm not trying to fish. I need food right now, right? And so I think we've got to help people get to that place where they can at least have a full belly to where they can, all right, I'm going to go work now. I've got all the nutrients I need to go into the workplace, go into the world and find my sustenance. But you meet so many people who've been starving for years, and we want them to get up and go to work tomorrow. They need to gain back their health, get back into the swing of being able to eat and take care of themselves, and then ultimately they'll get there. But that's not my test. That's between them and God, and my test is if I'm willing to give to them. Does that answer your question?
A few years ago, our church began to offer Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace, and there's been several people that have taken advantage of that opportunity, but what have you found has been like a motivator to get people to sign up to take a class like that?
So I've seen a couple. And Dave Ramsey, great course. He trained me back in 2013, so me and him on the same page. But I would say that and unfortunately we're in a place now where people need kind of like something to motivate them, right, versus just to try to take care of their responsibilities on their own. So maybe if they signed up for a course, typically if they sign up for a course, they want to do better financially, right? So let's say they sign up and the church is like, hey, listen, we'll donate $100 to you to help pay your Comcast bill this month, or something of that way to kind of maybe make an incentive, right? And so what I do in my course is if someone signs up for the class and they make it through it, they get the money back. Like, just get the money back. Like, you made it through it, now you're improving your finances, and your household is in a better position. Here, take the money back, right? And so ultimately, it helps them, right? And even if they want to come back again and take the class again, it's a severely discounted rate, right? Because they've already been there before. I just need to refresh them on it. But just offer some kind of incentive to where you're able to help them, I guess, get something back from it. Besides, even though they're gaining a lot from the course itself, people still want to kind of receive something, unfortunately. But those are just a few things I've seen and personally done myself. You're welcome. Yes?
How do you feel about mortgages when you talk about debt and being debt-free?
Mortgages. This is a very interesting conversation and great question. So when it comes to mortgages, ultimately, when I speak about being debt-free, ultimately you want to get to the point where you're also mortgage-free, right? Because at the end of the day, your home does not feel like a home until you own it. You're making the payments, you've got it all decked out, and furniture is all in there. Grass looks green and beautiful, but it's still there psychologically, right? That you're paying payments on this house. But ultimately, a mortgage is one of the few debts where it's like, okay, I've got to pay this house off. I'll pay it off over time versus spending money on rent. Does that make sense? But me personally, I'm getting to the place where I don't have any debt, not even a mortgage, and I'm to the point where I would rather go the slower route of buying a house cash down the road than to have a mortgage and be paying all this interest. I did the math. I've seen my parents. They paid off their house in 30 years, but they paid 3 times as much for the home. And they wonder where their retirement is. It was in their house. And so now me and my siblings are my parents' retirement, and that's a lot of pressure to put on your kids, And so it's just something to think about. If you do have a mortgage, just aggressively attack it. It shouldn't take a 30-year thing. It shouldn't be a 15-year thing. I'm talking like 7 or 8. Let's aggressively live modest and attack, and then be free, and then we can really give with power to the community and to ourselves.